Okay, this ain't even about me. That's why I'm on here with no makeup, no hair done. It ain't about me. It ain't about my opinion. I see so many people on the internet arguing about judging, to judge, to not to judge because of this whole Glorilla, Maverick City, Keisha Sheard debacle mess. Here's what I want us to get to. What does the word say? Like, my opinion don't matter, your opinion don't matter. What does the word say? And I just want to say this. Yes, you have to have a relationship with God, but your relationship with God is not all. And I know people feel like you just need that relationship because I was there a year or two ago. But the more I chase after God, and the more I'm asking God to like change my heart, clear my vision, help me to understand the things that you want me to understand, to see the things that you want me to see. He's revealing to me, I called you to be in community with other people for a reason. I gave you the word to teach you how to love other people for a reason. You need to be in community. You need to learn how to treat people in community. You need to learn how to disagree with people in community and then come back together onto my word and understand that my word is the truth. Point blank, period. Let's open up the Bible Project, which is a resource that I talked about in my How to Grow with God video because it has helped me understand things that other people have so many opinions about. But I just want to know what is God's opinion? What does God say? And what does this mean if I don't understand it? Okay? So last week they're doing a whole series on the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. I've been reading the tail end of the book of Matthew, so that's kind of what led me to this. I'm gonna go to October 7th, which is playlist 41. Let me just take my iPad off so y'all can see. It says, do not judge wisdom in relationships. Why does Jesus tell us not to judge others? And I promise you, this is not going to be what you think, but you have to read the word, y'all. Let's listen to the reading of the scripture first, because it reads it to you.
Do not judge, so that you will not be judged. Because with the judgment that you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure that you measure, it will be measured to you.
Relationships. Jesus begins this collection telling us not to condemn others. It's usually translated, do not judge. But then Jesus goes on to tell two parables about how to judge others, how to correct others in a healthy and righteous way. And this all takes a lot of wisdom. So Jesus ends these teachings with an encouragement to ask God for wisdom because he loves to give good gifts to his children. Finally, Jesus rounds out this whole main block of teachings with his famous saying, the Golden Rule. Let's listen to the words of Jesus and make his words our words. To help you reflect, we'll provide some resources along the way, like the 9th episode of our Sermon on the Mount series, some visual commentaries, an insight video, and short excerpts from our Sermon on the Mount podcast. Okay, take a deep breath. It's time to listen to the words of Jesus in Matthew 7, 1 through 12.
I really want y'all to go download the Bible Project app and go watch the rest of that series. I'm just going to read the very last, the ending of that series. Unpack the meaning of judge not lest ye be judged in Matthew 7, verse 1 through 2, exploring its historical, ethical, and practical implications for Christians today. The Bible is not just these stories of like what happened back in the day, but it's giving us a playbook of how we should go about things today, right now. And at this point, I had to shut up because remember, it's not about me. So let's walk through this together. Judge not, lest ye be judged, is often misinterpreted as a prohibition against all judgment. However, Jesus is specifically warning against condemning others. The Greek word used for judgment is krino, which can mean both to discern and to condemn. Jesus urges us to avoid condemning others instead of to practice self-reflection and humility. By teaching that we will be judged by the same standard we use to judge others, he encourages compassion over condemnation. What Jesus meant by judge. Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount holds significant implications for the way we live and relate with others. So we need to go deeper into Jesus' context to understand the nuances of his judgment language. In John's Gospel, we read that Jesus is not here to judge the world. But a few chapters later, Jesus says his purpose for coming into the world is for the judgment. Jesus is either making no sense or he's thinking about judgment from two different angles. So, before we examine the context of the larger biblical narrative, let's look at the judgment vocabulary. The word judge in Matthew 7:1 comes from the Greek word krino, which means to discern or decide, but it can also refer to condemnation, either in a legal court setting or in our day to day relationships. Paying attention to the context will help us know what the author means. Is Jesus saying, do not be discerning or do not be condemning? Here's the Bible translation of the whole command in Matthew 7, verse 1 through 2. Do not judge, krino, Greek, that so that you will not be judged, krino, because with the judgment, krino, that you judge, krino, you will be judged, krino, and with the measure that you measure, it will be measured to you. Immediately following this instruction, Jesus tells listeners how to approach someone who is behaving poorly. And not long after that, he says that we can discern the true character of people by observing the kind of fruit they bear. During his time on earth, Jesus lived what he thought or he taught, and he regularly, rather assertively, addressed people's harmful choices. So, it wouldn't make sense for him to prohibit us from using discernment in our relationship or the world at large. Instead, in this context, Jesus uses krino to refer to condemning others or treating them with judgmental contempt. He's talking about the times we decide another person doesn't measure up, so we look down on them or think of them as a lesser person. All right, here is an example of condemning judgment. What happens when we condemn others with our judgment? Jesus' interactions with some religious leaders who were often quick to judge can provide examples of the way God responds to our judgments of others. Consider the story of a woman who anoints Jesus with costly perfume in an alabaster jar. She kisses Jesus' feet, washes them with her tears, dries them with her hair, and finally pours the expensive fragrant liquid over them. Meanwhile, Simon, a religious leader, an important person around town, watches the woman. He knows of her bad reputation, and he thinks to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who and what sort of person this woman is who is touching him, that she is a sinner. Simon judges by what he can see on the outside and decides this woman is unworthy of Jesus' time and attention. His thoughts condemn her, but Jesus knows both Simon's thoughts and the woman's love that compels her brave and vulnerable act. So Jesus turns to Simon and responds to his hidden thoughts with a question. Imagine two debtors, Jesus says, one who owes a lot and the other hardly anything. And the lender chooses to cancel both of their debts. Of the two, who will love the lender more? I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled, Simon responds. Then Jesus points out that upon entering the house as a guest, Simon didn't perform any of the customary expressions of hospitality: a kiss of greeting, water to wash his feet, oil to anoint his head. In contrast, the woman tenderly performs each of these welcoming acts with extravagant love. She recognizes her need for Jesus, and like one who is forgiven a great debt, she is compelled by her love for him. Simon, on the other hand, does not see his need for Jesus' forgiveness. In fact, his positive judgment of himself leads him to look down on the woman and wrongly condemn her actions. This is exactly the kind of contempt Jesus has in mind when he tells his followers not to judge one another. And Jesus' response to Simon highlights what he means by "lest ye be judged." Jesus turns Simon's critical thoughts around and directs them back like a mirror towards his own life. Simon is so busy counting the woman's flaws that he overlooks his own lack of love and his need for Jesus. With his reply, Jesus lovingly and firmly holds Simon accountable for playing God and using unequal standards to justify himself while simultaneously condemning the woman. Immediately After teaching people to never judge or condemn one another, Jesus uses a striking word picture to describe how his followers should approach each other over issues that require careful discernment. This is Matthew chapter 7, verse 3 through 5. Recognizing, acknowledging, and addressing our own failures is a humbling process. Just like the woman who wept at Jesus' feet, we are reminded of our deep need for God. From this place of honest humility, we are less likely to judgmentally condemn or think less of others. The Jesus follower approaches all others humbly and gently, always operating from a posture of forgiveness and grace, rather than being driven by a sense of self importance. This kind of person's motivation comes from the love Paul describes in 1 Corinthians 13. A love that believes all things and hopes all things, choosing to respect every human being as a miraculous, beloved creation of God. He says, "Why do you see the speck in the eye of your brother, but you don't perceive the beam in your eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Allow me to take out the speck from your eye,' and look, the beam is in your eye? Hypocrite. First take out the beam from your eye, and then you can see clearly the speck in the eye of your brother." Jesus' words suggest that there is a time and place to speak up when we see a problem. Like Jesus, we can all call out wrongdoing in ways that do not condemn or even diminish each other. But notice, that isn't until the final line of his metaphor that Jesus says anything about assessing another person's behavior. The majority of his instruction is about the important first step of self reflection. Jesus is clear that his followers should not engage in condemning judgment towards others. And throughout his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks about how he clearly sees our inner motivations, the hidden realities that shape our lives, in a way that no one else can. He takes into account our grief, our disappointment, our desire to be noticed, a worry about the future, and our sincere desire to please God. So when we look down on another person, we act as though we can see their inner realities just as clearly. We end up trying to play God. It says, "Remember how humans bring corruption and death upon themselves precisely because they try to determine right and wrong apart from God, according to what is good or bad in their own eyes." In Genesis and in Jesus' teaching, we can hear God saying, "As finite beings, you do not have what it takes to make such complex judgments on your own. I have built you with everything it takes to love one another deeply, so keep doing that while you leave the judging part to me." It says, "Imagine living in a world where everyone treats everyone else, in thought and deed, the way that we all want to be treated, with fairness, kindness, generosity, and love. Rather than sizing one another up, trying to determine who is better or worse, who is good or bad, we instead choose to love one another because that's how we want to be treated." When Jesus says, "Judge not, lest ye be judged," he's not saying that all judgment is always wrong. He's calling people to a new and better way of relating to one another. Instead of judgmentally condemning or looking down on each other, we can operate with the power of divine mercy that heals what is broken, rather than simply hating it. With Jesus, we can practice the golden rule, approaching others with the same dignity and respectful love that we also hope to receive. And with that being said, I hope that we are praying to the one and only God, that we are loving Him with all our heart, all our mind, all our soul, and we are praying that He reshapes us, rebuilds us, and cleanses and cleans and reshapes our heart so that we can love others the way that He told us to. Because those are the two things He wants us to do really, really bad. Two important things. And I pray that in that you understand that the arguing, the back and forth is not what He wants us to be doing right now.